Well, what's up again there, guys? Brian here at 3TR, here to bring you another awesome top 10 list video to share with you guys today. Now, this list was actually requested by one of my awesome viewers, and I'll be sharing with you my top 10 favorite hack and slash games of all time. So, before I begin, I would just like to let you guys know that this is my personal list, so if there is a particular hack and slash game that you really enjoy that isn't on this list, don't take it personal. Chances are I just haven't played it or haven't heard of it before. So, without wasting any more time, let's jump right into my list, and we are starting off real simple with number 10.
Number 10 on my list is Lord of the Rings Return of the King for PlayStation 2, GameCube, and Xbox, which was released back in 2003 and was developed by EA. While most movie-based video games have a really bad rap at being cheap cashness to play off the release of a specific film, Return of the King is not one of those titles. The primary story mode is split between the three campaigns of Gandalf trying to rally the forces of Gondor, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli traveling into the depths of the mountain to resurrect the army of the dead, and of course Frodo and Sam as they are making their way to Mount Doom to destroy the One Ring of Power. Each campaign does a really great job at not only recreating key moments from the films, but actually expanding upon them and showing you just how difficult specific tasks were that we were not shown in the film. As you defeat enemies, you will gain experience points for each playable character, which will also allow you to upgrade and grant them even stronger weapons and special combos to deal more damage. Another great addition that the game has is the option of co-op, which will allow you to play with one extra friend to take on each mission. Once you have completed the main campaign, you can then play any chapter over again with any character, adding even more replayability. There's even some good behind the scenes video that you can check out if they're not already on YouTube by now, that go into more detail about the development of the game and even show you that some of the cast members from the film lend their voices to their characters in the game. In all, while Return of the King is a pretty straightforward and generic hack and slash title, the fact that it is based on one of the best fantasy films of all time that allows you to experience the action firsthand makes it, for me, well worth your time and effort to play. Number 9 on my list is another movie-based video game, but unlike number 10, which was based off a really great film, number 9 is based off of a really shitty film, which, in my opinion, this game is far superior than the film that it is actually based on, and that is X-Men Origins Wolverine. Now, I'm going to get the obvious out of the way first. This is a single-player only title, and it is only loosely based off the actual film, but it does make sure to include a number of key moments that did happen in the film, with a majority of the main campaign simply having you play as Logan while he's taking part in a series of missions that he was a part of before getting his adamantium claws. Now, with the M rating, all of the excessive violence, gore, and blood that should have been in the film is present here, and there are some of the most violent kills that Logan has ever pulled off before, not only his claws, but being able to pull them off using the elements of your environment as well. Once you have finished the main campaign, there are a number of gameplay modes that will require you to pull off specific objectives, and there are even some modes that will allow you to play against other versions of yourself. X-Men Origins takes a lot of gameplay elements from other titles, some that happen to be on this very list as well, and while that doesn't make it very original as a game, for me it does get some serious respect points for taking something that should have been enjoyable and actually creating an alternative version that is very much entertaining. Number 8 on my list is Castlevania Lords of Shadow. Now, the Castlevania series has been through a series of gameplay styles, from side-scrollers to platforming RPGs, and though this was not the first attempt for Castlevania to try to trans over into 3D, since attempts had been made back on the N64, I think that most would agree that Lords of Shadow was the first true success. Now, the main plot has you play as Gabriel Belmont, and when you are sent away by the Brotherhood of Light, Gabriel eventually finds himself in the land of the Necromancers, and from that point on, chaos erupts, and it is up for Gabriel to fight off the forces of darkness and prevent the return of evil power. Now, the developers wanted to distance this game from its predecessors by adding the largest variety of enemies to date at the time of this game's release. Another major element that the main gameplay style was added was the multiple uses of your primary weapon, the Combat Cross. In combat, the Combat Cross can access up to 40 different combo attacks and also has a wide variety of uses when it comes to exploration. Key trademarks from the franchise also return, like platforming, puzzles, and key components. The game also has some great voice acting and an excellent score, which adds to the level of enjoyment that this entry will provide you. Castlevania Lords of Shadow is a great example of how to properly reboot a franchise by bringing in some fresh new energy to bring in new fans while not forgetting its roots for older fans, granting both parties an excellent experience. Number 7 on my list was produced by the legendary Hideo Kojima and is, in my opinion, the very underrated Zone of Enders: The Second Runner. Now, when it comes to game plots, anytime Kojima is involved in any capacity, you know that you're going to get something somewhat confusing, but I'll try to simplify it. This game takes place in 2174, and when a simple miner named Callisto discovers an orbitable frame named Juggedy, and after a series of really confusing events, something happens to Callisto that almost gets him killed, and when he is revived in place of Juggedy, it acts as his primary life support, and from then on, he simply joins the UNSF forces and fights against another military force, and that's really all I want to say without spoiling too much, because I really would like you guys to experience this for yourself. Now, apart from the obvious and primary cutscenes that are done in anime style, which is awesome, I must say what really makes Zone of Enders: The Second Runner stand apart from any other game on this list is its visuals. Not counting its predecessor, you can clearly see multiple visual style elements that are presented in other games that Hideo Kojima has worked on. The gameplay mechanic is also very unique, as throughout the game, your character can not only move on a horizontal plane, but also a vertical one as well, giving you 360 degrees in every area to operate in. The combat gameplay is pretty straightforward, with each mission throwing hordes of robotic enemies at you, with an opposing orbitable frame pilot being the boss of some of these missions, and will really require you to master the abilities and capabilities of your orbitable frame in order to take them down. It has also got one of the most impressive soundtracks that fits this game's style perfectly, which seems to be a running theme that will continue on into number 6 on this list. What Zone of Enders: The Second Runner has going for it on my list is its simple uniqueness and its ability to stand apart from any other game on this list, which is why I would highly recommend it to anyone trying to look for something different. Number 6 on my list is another game also associated with Hideo Kojima, and it just so happens to be Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. Now, as a massive Metal Gear fan, this remains to date to be one of the biggest surprises that I've ever experienced going into this game, because I really didn't think Metal Gear could work as a hack and slash, but I'm so glad I was wrong, because in terms of its gameplay, it is simply incredible. Now, personally, in terms of game plots, I don't really like the plot of this game and refuse to acknowledge it as a part of the official Metal Gear canon. But that's alright, because the combat action is so fast-paced, so over-the-top, and so awesome that you won't even care about the game's plot. Now, like most hack-and-slash games, you will fight your way through a variety of enhanced cybernetic opponents and are given a variety of different weapons and tools that you can use at your disposal. The boss fights throughout this game are numerous and are insanely challenging and entertaining at the same time, and what adds more to these boss fights is the incredible soundtrack, which I will state right now, for the record, that Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance has without question the single best soundtrack of any game on this list, and has one of the greatest soundtracks I've ever heard. What Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance achieves was the ability to add a new style and new tone to an already established franchise and make it work, and that is something that most game publishers can't do with their own established franchises, which makes Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance that much more special to me. Number 5 on my list is 2003's Prince of Persia: Sands of Time. Now, this is without question one of the best reboots to any franchise to date, and the plot is also pretty straightforward and simple. You will play as the nameless Prince of Persia, and when you get a hold of the Dagger of Time, the Sands of Time eventually get loose in your palace, turning everyone you know into sand demons, and it's up to you to fight and navigate your way through your own palace to get to the top to reverse the effects of the Sands of Time and prevent it from ever happening. Now, while the game is pretty light on actual narrative, it is its gameplay that really makes this game remarkable. It is equally divided between platforming and combat. The platforming element will have you climbing up and down ladders, running on walls, flipping on bars, sliding down poles, solving puzzles, and the works. Now with the combat, since the Prince is so acrobatic, you will be pulling off flips, kicks, dodges, rolls, jumps in order to maneuver around your enemies, and you will even be able to use the environment itself, adding an extra element of combat, which by 2003 had not really been seen before in previous games. But the most innovative aspect of this game is the use of the Dagger of Time. This mechanic adds so much to both varieties of gameplay. While platforming, if you happen to make a mistake and die, unlike other platformer games which would probably give you a game over screen or have you start over from a previous checkpoint, you could simply rewind time and try again. Half of the challenge of Prince of Persia is simply figuring out how to progress forward. This is also helpful in combat, as if you find yourself being overwhelmed or caught off guard, you can actually just completely rewind the entire fight from the beginning, actually watching the battle in reverse and change up your methods. And this is also helpful because the dagger also gives you a number of really special powers that can make combat even more entertaining. This element alone made Prince of Persia: Sands of Time one of the greatest hack and slashes of all time, and that stands true even today for me. Number 4 on my list is Star Wars The Force Unleashed, and I have to admit, I'm really surprised that more people don't talk about this game, because compared to its sequel, which was undoubtedly disappointing, this was a great Star Wars game and easily holds a place within my top 5 favorite Star Wars video games of all time. The story that follows Darth Vader's secret apprentice Starkiller is one of the best of its kind that I've seen within the Star Wars expanded universe, and it's just a shame that Disney decided to make it non-canon, as the story would not really hurt the current timeline that the official timeline is running on. The gameplay style is pretty standard, as you will cut your way through enemies with your lightsaber, as well as have access to a pretty good collection of force powers that can all be used alongside your lightsaber, delivering even more punishment. Your lightsaber can also be customized, and your powers can be upgraded with the use of experience points that you will gain by defeating enemies. There is also a good collection of boss fights, with the boss fight against Master Shaak Ti being my personal favorite in the game. Now, this game also has the option of giving you 2 possible endings, as well as giving you a number of DLC missions that put you in some really creative what-if scenarios that really give this game a lot of content, making you feel like one heck of a lightsaber-wielding badass. Number 3 on my list is Dantes Inferno. Now, I've actually heard from some that they think that this is nothing but a carbon copy of another game, and while I can say there's certainly some elements that are similar, there is a fair enough here that not only gives Dantes Inferno its own identity, but actually surpasses a majority of the installments that the specific franchise that some say this game is ripping off. The plot follows Dante as he must travel through the 9 circles of hell in order to save his beloved Beatrice. As you progress through the story, you will learn more about Dante's past experiences during the Crusade and what sins he may have committed that have condemned his beloved to hell. The game's gameplay style, for the most part, is pretty traditional in terms of platforming and combat. However, something that is rather different is the function of your skill tree. As you progress through the game, you will encounter damned souls, and depending on whether you choose to punish or absolve them, will either grant you extra experience points to upgrade your combat abilities, or grant you other special surprises that I will not spoil here. Another element that really helps Dantes Inferno stand apart from other hack and slash titles is its artistic and visual style. As you travel through the circles of hell, you will not only notice that the look of the environment will not only change, but the variety of enemies, and this game also has some of the most disturbing video game bosses that I've ever encountered to date, making Dantes Inferno one of the most artistically impressive games that I've ever played, as well as enjoyable. Number 2 on my list is a PlayStation 2 classic, and by far the most impressive installment in its franchise, and that just so happens to be Devil May Cry 3. Now, after the underwhelming response that Devil May Cry 2 received, Capcom went right back to work and not only fixed all the issues fans had with Devil May Cry 2, but improved upon everything we had all come to love about the franchise. The story going over Dante's past with his twin brother Virgil and how his demonic powers were finally awakened within him to this day remains the most interesting plot in the franchise, while also introducing one of the most badass characters in all of video games, Virgil himself. The gameplay was so heavily improved upon that I believe to this day it remains to be one of Capcom's most beloved games ever made. The introduction of the style system gives you so many options on how you can play that one cannot help but want to play this game multiple times just to test out the different combat styles and how they operate in specific missions throughout the game. In all, Devil May Cry 3 is a perfect example of what happens when developers listen to their fans, which is why this classic title places number 2 on my list. Number 1 on my list, and my personal choice for best hack and slash game, goes to God of War 3. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about this one because I've already gone over it in a previous ranking video, so I'll keep it simple like this. God of War 3 is my personal favorite entry in the franchise. It is a perfect 10 game for me. This game is 7 years old now, and I've played it more times than any other entry in the franchise, and I still cannot find a goddamn thing to complain about it. The gameplay, though hasn't changed much since the first installment back in 2005, is simply superb. This game has some of the best quick time event animations that I have ever seen in a video game ever, with some of the most visually impressive boss fights I've ever experienced. This game has my personal favorite sex scene, which allows you to bang the goddess of love herself, Aphrodite, even though you technically can't see it visually. And on top of that, what really makes this game number 1 for me is something I said in another video. This game embodies the term and word epic, which is a word that I could never attach to any other video game on this list, and that is not a strike against any other game on this list. Some of these games are good, some of these games are great, some of these games are really unique, and some of them even reinvented themselves, but I would never even think about attaching the word epic to any of those games but this one. And just to add the cherry on the top, me being a Sony guy since 1997, Kratos is the face of PlayStation. Microsoft has Chief, Nintendo has Mario, we got Kratos. Hell, he's been kicking ass since 2005, and his 7th game is coming out next year. But out of any of the God of War games that have come out to date, for me personally, because I know that some of you will say that God of War 1 is the best, and some of you will say God of War 2 is the best, God of War 3 is the best hack and slash game and easily deserves the number 1 spot on this list.
And that'll do it for my list. Let me know, what did you guys think of my list? But even better, why don't you guys tell me some of the best hack and slash games that you've ever played? Share your list with me and everyone else in the comments down below. And if you guys have any more ideas that you think would make for a great top 10s list video, be sure to share those ideas too in the comments down below as well. And if you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe to keep track of me and my future videos. And like always, thank you guys for watching. You're awesome, and I'll see you next time.